something like getting married is a ritual, to commit to somebody forever and to say that you are now my family. It deserves a ritual. It is something that we're grieving and we don't even realize it. The loss of these rituals and the loss of what does the ritual do but concretize the symbolic.
Welcome to Soror Mystica, a podcast exploring life's mysteries and magic through its symbols.
I'm Mariana Lewis, an archetypal tarotist.
And I'm astrologer Cristina Farella.
And just as the Soror Mystica guided the alchemist through his holy work, we hope to be your mystic sisters in these conversations, guiding you deeper into the symbolic life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soror Mystica. We are here rejoining one another for podcast purposes. And we've been on a little bit of a break, mostly because of my life just like changing in every direction. And I just moved from the West Coast back to the East Coast. I got married. I did all the things. I went on honeymoon, and now I'm here, and I am, I'm alive again. Basically, I had to, I had to disappear from the internet for a little bit, but I'm slowly coming back. So it's exciting to be back in this space with my friend and be back with everybody else.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
We usually set a time to have our recording sessions, but what we actually do is we set a time to come into the recording space, and then we talk for like 2 hours, and then
we talk for like an hour and a half. Yeah.
So I feel like we've already had a podcast today together, but we haven't yet. So this is going to be just a lovely place to pick up. And kind of in keeping with life events, today we're going to be discussing the symbol of marriage. And so I'm excited to unpack this, because even though it's a societally expected thing, especially for women, I feel, and there's a lot of baggage around it, it's a really alchemical sort of symbol and experience for us all. So excited to do that. I want to know what you're reading, but first, I guess I have some announcements, but also, how are you? And do you want to say hi to people?
Hi people. I'm all right. I've had a Christina's been doing all the big life changes, and my life has just been like falling apart. My cat is sick, and so I'm like a little bit stressed right now, but I'm excited to come back to a bit of normalcy and like natural patterns and stuff. So like I totally forgot we even had a podcast for a minute, because
That's mean. How dare you?
Because I was just like, everything has been like, where am I? What's life? What does life even look like? So now that we're kind of like returning to things, it's like, oh yeah, there's so much good stuff to do and to think about. So we're here. We're gonna do it, and I'm very excited.
It's good to have normal ports in the storm, so to speak. And one of the things that I think for a long time kept me sane, being, in the kind of end stages of life in Oregon, was this project. And so it's very good to feel like I'm coming back into it. And it's been an interesting time. But I think that, you have Uranus on your Imamqueli right now, and you just started a 12th house period in zodiacal releasing. So it's a big turning point of life for you. You're having once in a lifetime experiences with the planets and your chart, and it's showing. But I think that there's also really beautiful stuff brewing behind the scenes as well, amongst all of the turmoil and turning of the wheel. So I think that what I'm noticing lately is the wheel turning and feeling very much like that is happening. And for a long time, I personally felt like the wheel was going nowhere. And so now it's moving, and we're both like, oh my God. But
things change very rapidly when they change. And so, You just got to hold on and stay at the hub, as
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Campbell would say.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So for anybody listening who also feels kind of like life is bizarre right now, and it certainly is, we're recording this on October 26th. If you're American, we have an election coming up, and just the world is kind of unhinging itself from reality. But that also is in keeping with the planets and all those different cycles that are unfolding. So we're just kind of try to hold the center and see what we can see about personal alchemy through our symbol today. So that's our goal. In terms of announcements, I would love to invite everyone to check out my new class, which is called the Witch Triumvirate. I love this title. I don't know why.
I love that word.
It's such a good word.
It's a really good word. It's like triptych. It's another great word.
Triptych is also a great word. And they're kind of, they're similar. It could have been the witch triptych, Witch Triumvirate. And so this class is really for people who have a spiritual practice, are, witchy oriented, witchy adjacent, witches, whatever you want to identify yourself, and feel like they've lost touch with what gives their practice its spark. And this class will be held over the series of 3 lectures, live lectures on Zoom, like my classes always are for the most part, taking you through, number 1, astrological magic and correspondences between planets and energies. Number 2, astroherbalism and the correspondences between plants, planets, and actions. And class number 3, focusing on spell writing, altar crafting, the care and keeping of altars, ancestor work, etc. So it's a kind of like a reopening of the door for people who are looking for a new way to realign themselves with their spiritual practice. We're in Scorpio season. We're in the kind of darkening phase of the year. So
we are in Scorpio season already. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's Scorpio time.
Shoot.
It's your time.
My birthday is so soon. Oh my God.
Yep. Appropriate.
Time.
That can be our soundbite.
Jesus Christ.
Cool. So anyway, before I scared Mariana with reminding her about time, come to class. It starts November 12th. And I'd love to see you there. It's going to be super fun and very, very rich. I'm having a delightful time putting it together. So if you like plants, planets, and poetry, wow. I didn't know I could do that. This will be a good class.
I love it. I love that you haven't taught a witchy class in a while, so I'm really glad you're doing that, because you're a very, very phenomenal and well-versed witch.
Thanks.
You're a good witch.
It's because I have a lot of emotions. So
well, you also just know how to witch. You know how to do it. So not everybody is as good at witching as you are. I'm not as good at witching as you are.
And we all have our own way.
Yeah, you're better. You know how to do herbs and prayers and altars and all the things that you're teaching about, whereas I'm just kind of like throw things at it and hope that it's good.
I just really have like a serious affinity for plants, and I just kind of use that as like an anchor, honestly, for my work. And I think that's what I think there's a tangible component to the kind of magic that I like to do. And so cooking as well as herbalism for me are like really big. I think that's what makes it a little bit more grounded maybe than, a kind of approach to magic that we're often told, which is about like maybe like knowledge or power or, energy in this really disembodied way. I like to make it super earthy and super like, you can throw salt around your kitchen and you're protecting yourself, it's like that kind of stuff.
No, I love that.
So that's all important. I have my very chubby cat on my lap, and he's like
he is a big boy.
He's like slowly melting off of my legs. We're going to see how this goes. Okay, let's move this along, Cristina. The last thing I wanted to share before we dive into what we're reading is that this is my husband's book, Dreaming at Noon.
How does that feel?
I know, I have a husband now. I feel like He already called me his wife for years,
But
just
he
like
did so
as a joke,
sillily.
sillily.
Yeah, so now it's
So
legitimate.
it's very cute. So, yeah, my husband published a poetry book. It's called Dreaming at Noon. He's sponsoring this episode. It's Scorpio season. He's a Scorpio. And this is his book of poetry. And it's perfect for our listenership who loves thinking about the divine, because this book is about engaging with the divine within and without, being asleep and dreaming, and being awake and encountering the divine in nature. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing to celebrate. So, in honor of our marriage, he's coming through with this little Dreaming at Noon, I don't know, offering. So we'll link it in the comments. It's a beautiful book.
Fantastic collection of poetry.
All right. So, Mariana, what are you reading besides Dreaming at Noon?
I'm reading Aniela Jaffe's The Myth of Meaning. It's a very interesting little book about Jung and the idea of meaning and deriving meaning from life. So that's been cute. And I also just finished a book by Kazuo Ishiguro, which
Oh,
is what
yeah.
I thought. Yeah. So most people have read like Never Let Me Go, that novel by him, which I like, but it's not my favorite. But he wrote Buried Giant, which I freaking loved this book. And it's a novel based in like post-Roman Britain. So it's like the year maybe like 800 or like 700 or something like that. It's post-Arthurian though, so it's got to be maybe like 800, 900. And it's like just like the lives of this elderly medieval couple trying to visit their son in another village, but it's also like a fairy tale adventure where they encounter like knights and ogres and warriors and stuff like that. And then there's like a dragon or something that's like putting a spell on everybody, and it's just so mythical and cute. And I was just like, why did he write this little fairy tale thing? And then by the time I got to the end, I was like, oh my god, it's so many layers of metaphor. Oh, it's so good. So I really, really, really enjoyed that.
That sounds great. I want to check it out.
Yeah, it was a sweet, sweet book. I audiobooked it just because that's what I do when I'm walking to and fro places. I like to listen to something and not just sit and stew in my brain. So it's a great audiobook too.
That's cool. That's good to know. Yeah.
What are you
That's
reading?
crazy. I'm reading a book called Vivian. It's a novel. It's new. It's by Emily Russo. She's someone who's like on, I would say, like the occult internet. She has an excellent Substack that I discovered last year because she was writing, like while reading the Inferno, Dante's Inferno, she was writing creative essays about hell and magic and stuff like that. And so I've just kind of followed her, and she seems to write a lot of cultural criticism and poetry, and she seems like an interesting human. So she published a novel, and it's very like funny. It's kind of reminding me a little bit of like Otessa Moshfe's like style in terms it's like there are comedic elements to it, but it's a story seemingly about this like elderly artist who is part of a new collection of like forgotten women surrealists. Like this sounds like something that really could have happened. So it's like a fictional book, but this artist is included in this retrospective of forgotten women surrealists, and then she gets canceled because people quote discover that she like killed her lover's ex-girlfriend or something in the 70s in France. And it's just kind of like a story of her daughter, and her granddaughter's personalities and commentary on the art world and stuff like that. So I'm enjoying it. I just started it.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely very interesting, and the kind of like feminine, like family lineage thing seems very, very intense as an element here. So always curious about that. And yeah, I'll let you know. It's cool.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, marriage. What do you have to say about marriage?
It's cool. No,
as a
I want to
newlywed.
say, I want to say that I really think that this is a tough idea for us as like women, so I want to say that I guess I'll be like sharing personal stuff on this episode a little bit, but I've been with my partner for 17 years or something like that.
Yeah, we've
On
been.
and
I
on.
think you were started dating him a year after I started dating
Yeah.
my husband.
We're
Yeah, it's
both
like right at the same time.
long-term humans.
Mm-hmm.
And, we broke up a few times, but we always found our way back to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
the story is very long and meandering, but I never felt like I needed to be married. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, I felt like against the idea of being married because I just hated, as a feminist, the concept of being like given away by my father to another man, taking a man's name, having
Mm-hmm.
all these things happen. It just felt very, very like, why does
Mm-hmm.
anyone need that? And
Yeah.
so for a long time, I was super like, I literally don't need this to be a thing
Mm-hmm.
at all. And then,
And then you proposed.
yeah, we got older, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that um, our families wanted us to be married, and it's a very sweet symbol and
Mm-hmm.
gesture. Um, but I still, I was excited to be engaged, but we got engaged in 2019, and we didn't even try to plan
Mm-hmm.
a wedding until this past spring,
Mm-hmm.
literally. So, and I just had resistance about it, not because of my relationship or my partner or the idea of being somebody's like life forever person, but just what the institution of marriage
Yeah.
is, which seems to equate women and has equated women with property.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that that's where I start with the idea of marriage when I
Mm-hmm.
think about it. And I'm just like, for why? That was always my question.
Stefan and I are watching. Stefan is my husband. Probably mention him too. We were watching Love Is Blind because, of course, it's great. It's amazing television. Honestly, it is just if you want to get better at learning about people's complexes, um, just watch the show. But we watched the episode where they have the weddings at the very end, and for all of the weddings, they have the same speech that they give, and the officiant was like, "Who presents this woman to this man each time?"
Hmm.
And I just like, why do they use this wording like they're selling a cow at the market? It is just so grotesque and terrible. It's so bad, and it's like this is 2024. Why are we saying who presents this woman to this man? Who
Yeah.
presents her? Who offers her? And what is the final price of the sale? And make sure it's recorded in the books.
Hmm.
It's very bad. So I
Yeah.
feel you.
Marriage to me also, I think in fairy tales and in myths, is often like a young woman, two kings agree it would be great to unify their kingdoms. So a young girl is basically like sold to
Mm-hmm.
another kingdom, and she goes in a chariot with a bunch of cows and a box of gold and rubies, and then everybody's happy that she's, married off. And it just seems like a kind of a theft of a woman's autonomy in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these old stories. And
Yeah.
so that is kind of how a patriarchal way of holding marriage has forced us to engage with it. And I think that that is probably something that a lot of us feel.
Yeah.
And if you haven't questioned this before and I sound crazy, I'm sorry. I am angsty, but this was
No.
my take on it
If
for a
you
really
haven't
long
questioned this
time.
before, time to question it. It's
But I
important.
think it's like one of those things too that we use to mark time and mark
Yeah.
like the worth of someone's life too. So there are a lot of people who never get married and wind up feeling societally disregarded because
Mm-hmm.
they're not included in like the married people club, and that's
Yeah.
also terrible and wrong and
Yeah.
stupid. So, there's just a lot of it that is ridiculous. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what started like shifting for me was when we were in Oregon last August, I suppose. Yeah. We had a kind of like going away party slash West Coast wedding for our friends that wouldn't be able to
Mm-hmm.
make it to our East Coast wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, something kind of like clicked in my brain because we didn't plan anything about this, but I made like a crown of eucalyptus for Michael and like pinned it to his head. And I pinned baby breath in my hair. And I like held a bunch of flowers and I stood with him in front of our friends. And another one of our pals, you know, had us like promise to each other that we'll be together forever and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And just the experience of being witnessed and like holding your person's hand in front of other people who are really listening. It felt like this really intense energy exchange for me at that point. And I was like, oh, this is actually really, really alchemical. And this is actually really important and purposeful for this relationship at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so that was a very different experience than the New York wedding. That
Yeah.
Mariana was my maiden of honor
Yes.
and gave an amazing speech that made everybody cry. No surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, that was a different kind of wedding. That was like a family wedding where everybody
In a tempest.
in a tempest, right? So this was the cool thing about this day was that even though like my family is New York, Irish, Italian, that's like the vibe and that's a whole thing. And if you don't know about that, I don't know, you can go watch a Robert De Niro movie or something, but it's a vibe. And so you know, it was a beautifully intentioned event. We had like a tent in the backyard. We had like, you know, I had the dress, we had the flowers, everything
Very
was,
beautiful
was
dress.
very
Yes.
supposed to be kind of formal. And at the last minute, right before the wedding, like ceremony, a huge storm rolled in and we were supposed to be doing our wedding on a beach. And we could have pulled the plug and we could have waited like an hour, or we could have like had the ceremony at my dad's in my
the
dad's
backyard.
backyard.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, we are going to do it right now in this storm. And so we got married in a very brief ceremony because there was like sideways rain, like literally rain, like moving across my face from left to right, screaming our vows at each
I
other.
had to scream at people to sit down.
You were screaming at people to sit down. You were holding my veil because it was like enveloping
no
me.
one wanted to put their butts on wet chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sit your asses down, people.
All of the guests
all wet.
were very confused. But it was this really cool experience too, because I felt like we were in the elements together.
Yeah.
And that again is like kind of part of the alchemical symbolic turn that I think is really true about a marriage, which is two people coming together and essentially blending into one entity or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a storm wedding.
Full
the
storm.
Pictures are really cool.
Yeah,
and
they're cool.
We'll see. I still haven't cleaned my dress. It's still full of sand in my closet, which is really bad. So
I mean, who cleans their dress?
Someone who has sand in the crevice.
Put it in the back of the closet. You're never gonna look at that thing again. Yeah, I think that it was very it's very romantic and very had no room for formality at all. I felt bad for the musicians because they were like, are we playing? Are we playing? And then by the time they lifted their bowstrings, you're already in front of the altar. Yep. I was like, okay, we're going.
Those poor people, like, I hope that the rain didn't damage their instruments. That was really sad.
They're fine. But yeah, it was very taking all the formality out of it, made it just like the raw thing that it is, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that that's what made me feel good about that day. Besides everybody being cute and lovely, like I think that it really, nothing went the way that it was planned to go. And I think that maybe in another lifetime, you know, maybe I would have been upset about that, of like everything being pretty much destroyed in terms of ceremony. But, you know, kind of rendering at the core what it is actually about, which is like you and your person kind of in the elements. And it's more, you know, a kind of blending of essences in the face of life, which is elemental. So
yeah. And the rest of the wedding was great. I mean, your reception was awesome, and all the pictures were so pretty and all that stuff. So
Mike ate a scorpion from the bottom of a mezcal
bottle.
That
he ate a scorpion.
I didn't forget.
Oh, that was so stressful.
That was really stressful. Really, really great. So we had fun. It was very beautiful and special. But yeah, I think that today, I wanted to like explore this and sort of offer a reframe around what marriage is. And
Mhm.
we don't even have to keep talking about, the kind of wedding that we're talking about
Mhm.
now. There are lots of really interesting elements around marriage in myth and in fairy tale and, in archetypal studies. So I really want to hear you talk about the Hyros Gamos. That
Mhm.
would be exciting to me.
The Hyros Gamos is a term. It means the sacred wedding, basically, and it's in the ancient world. We find in so many mythologies this idea of the masculine and feminine coming together, and through that maybe creates a child, creates a birth of something new. But there's always this repeated theme in all these mythologies and all these stories of the unification of these two elements. Um, I like to think of them, the way I talk about them in the tarot, as the primordial powers. This is kind of like what we're bringing together into a single experience. So in the Hieroskamos, we think about this a lot in alchemy. Um, this idea of the sacred wedding, of the sacred marriage, is at the core of especially medieval alchemy. This kind of image of the masculine and feminine coming together. We see it in the symbol of the rebus, which is that single body with the two heads, the male and female head. We see it in the images of the red king and the white queen, which were symbolic of sulfur and salt, maybe. I think so. Coming together in the alembic, in the actual vessel. But they were, the iconography, the art that depicted this was almost always with this masculine element and this feminine element in some way coming together, being bound. And so there was this idea of this unity, this union. So that the marriage was a symbol for these two things fusing and intertwining. And so this is a very important idea for us understanding on some level the fusing and intertwining of our conscious and unconscious sides of our
Hmm.
personality, um, and at the same time our own inner feminine and masculine elements. And of course, we say this so many times on the show, but when we're talking about these as elements, as principles, as archetypes, we're not talking about them in any way that represents biology or even gender. It's about our own the archetypal experience of these things that live fluidly in
Hmm.
us, that we connect to on various levels that shift. And so the idea of them coming together to form something is so profound in our archetypal imagination.
Hmm.
um that's kind of what this Hyros Gamos, Jung also called it the Mysterium Conjunctionis, which is the mysterious conjunction of these two elements into something. He wrote, in fact, I don't know if it's his very last book, but I feel like it might be, was called the Mysterium Conjunctionis. I haven't read it. I need to read it, but I'm a little scared of it because I've heard it's makes no sense. Um, so,
That's
um,
funny.
but I've read a lot of people summarizing it, so it's there's this beautiful element that we replicate in some way in marriage. I remember my own wedding was in a church. I was raised Catholic, and I was a Catholic employee, so I got married in the church. And there is something really special about having the sacredness of it in a space like that, and having it feel like, this is a sacrament, because in the Catholic faith it is a
Hmm.
sacrament. And to say that this is one of the the primal stages of individuation, that at least the kind of Catholic Church lays out their sacraments, which are like basically metaphors for the stages of individuation.
Hmm.
And that's one of the key ones, unless you go the other route and become a hermit and take the priesthood and stuff. But I think that was really cool, like as you said, to feel that symbolic thing, um, to feel the symbolic, like, oh, I'm choosing this intertwining in some way with the other, which is very pretty.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that it's one of those times in life, like the sacraments kind of are there to remind us of that we need ritual in
Yeah.
order to kind of keep feeling like the wheel turns. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to like run out and get married in order to feel like a person, but
Please don't.
please don't. It was though for me a reminder of like, wow, community witnessed ritual is very, very significant in terms of feeling like you're a part of the world that you live in.
Yeah.
I think that we talk a lot about personal ritual in this context, in witchy contexts in general. And it is really important to kind of have an individual ritual practice, especially living in a world that's very alienated from any kind of ritual awareness or seasonal awareness or whatever you're doing.
Well, that's part of what your class is going to be about.
Yeah, that's true. Right. So yes, the personal ritual is extremely fundamental to our functioning. But it also reminded me like, wow, the world needs to witness us at certain points in time in order for us to kind of move forward. So that was interesting. That was unexpected for me.
Yeah, I think public ritual is in many ways almost equally important to the private ritual. And I think that we neglect that because we're post-religion at this point in the world. That's not to say religion doesn't exist. It's just like for most people, at least in like the US, for example, and like urban US in 2024, to be of a certain religion is like maybe probably something you grew up with, but maybe not something that you act out intentionally in your adult life. And I don't think that we have fully understood the gravity of that loss. And I don't think we will for another 100 years or so. But when you think about our ancestors, sure, they had very oppressive systems. There was a lot of corruption. There's a lot of terrible, terrible things that came with structured religion. But the key center of it was the ritual. And this is the thing that was grounding for everybody. And it also put pressure on us to do things like get married. And, my grandmother got married at, gosh, I want to say 23. But 1942. So she was 22 actually. And I don't think she really wanted to marry my grandpa based on like the things I have found out since, letters I have found and stuff like that. He was very bossy. And he was basically bullied her into marrying him. And it was time. In 1942, it was time. She was 22 years old. What was she going to do next? She had a job, which was cool for her, but it was also the war, so that's why she had a job. And she just was like, okay, yeah, I guess so, let's do it. And then her sister, my Aunt Jo, did just never got married, and she had a boyfriend. She had a man that lived in the house with her. Separate bedrooms, but lived in the house with her and went everywhere with him. And I called him my uncle and the whole thing. But they never got married. And it was like a big thing we did not talk about in the family. And no one asked her about it. And we just didn't discuss it. And no one really understood why. Whenever, later I would ask about it, ask my mom, she'd be like, I don't know. I'd be like, excuse me, there's a secret here that I would like to find out. What is going on? Was she gay? This is what was going on, and she just had a best friend who just loved her anyway. I don't know what was going on there, but that's the thing. Like, it was so understood that you have to participate in the ritual, that to not was like really rebellious and really crazy. But now we've gone so far in the opposite direction. This is the idea that Jung called an enantiodromia, right? That the psyche tries to stabilize itself. It gets too one-sided. It will try to restabilize by going to the opposite direction. And so we kind of had this collective sort of enantiodromian thing of like being so indoctrinated into like you have to go through these rituals of life that now we're like completely rebelling against it and refusing them, which is totally okay and totally within our right. But I do think that there is a loss of community. There's a loss of something sacred in the ritual. Something like getting married is a ritual, to commit to somebody forever and to say that you are now my family. It deserves a ritual around that. And so I think it is something that we're grieving and we don't even realize it. The loss of these rituals and the loss of what does the ritual do but concretize the symbolic, right?
Exactly.
So and
Beautiful.
it's something that we're missing in ways. And then we have stupid weddings that we go to where nothing's being concretized and it's just about people doing stupid dances
Oh my
and
God.
throwing things across the room, and
No,
who cares? Yeah, so it's
that
my tirade.
is all very true. And um, I think that, yeah, the way that we need personal witchcraft and the way that we need ritual connection with the earth, with the seasons, with symbols, we also do need these kind of community symbolic ways
Yep.
of connecting and saying, I'm a part of this community. I'm
Mm-hmm.
here, to
Mm-hmm.
be whatever. I'm moving into the future. I'm
Yep.
moving, up on the family tree, whatever you're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do think that obviously those systems have been immensely harmful to people,
Mm-hmm.
especially like women, queer people,
Yeah.
marginalizing and silencing a lot of us in the
Mm-hmm.
process of being upheld. And so,
Yeah.
the kind of dismantling of those systems makes a lot of sense too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what I always intuited, like as a fellow Catholic kid sitting in
Yeah.
church being like, but why? Why is it like this?
Yeah.
So I think that what was interesting that I witnessed, and I really only think that well, maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit, but I feel like I had to do all of the like personal work that I've done to get to this point to appreciate the ceremony and its symbolism for
Mm-hmm.
what I've felt in it at
Mm-hmm.
this particular time. Like I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
had to be 35 and
Mm-hmm.
through a lot and aware of the importance of the symbol of the alchemical kind of union for it to really resonate with me.
Yeah.
But I do think that we all kind of deserve more moments of that, more moments of like feeling a sense of recognition or feeling a sense of um, commitment and being committed to by something
Mm-hmm.
else, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that this is the task for us, is like, how do we retrieve the ritual without going back to the religion? Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
that, and that's something that Joseph Campbell said was like impossible. And he really, he just kind of like said, nope, can't do it, because the religion is the thing that creates the authenticity of the ritual. I hope that's not true, because I don't think that, there's any room to go back to what, was, as you said, so oppressive for so many people. It's like we're moving past it because there is something dead in the idea of God, the idea of this way of thinking about God. But at the same time, like, I don't think that we have found our way back to meaningful ritual yet
Mm-hmm.
as a society. And this is something I struggle with a lot, as a very spiritual person, um, who like knows the value of ritual, and yet around me I don't have resource to that. I don't have like a community that will be like, oh, you are moving or whatever whatever the thing is that's going on, therefore we're going to throw this event for you, or you're going to go through this ceremony. Because I don't belong to a community that knows what it's doing, why it's doing it, which is what religion is, right? Like, so religion would say, oh, you had a baby, you have to go to a christening, that's what
Mm-hmm.
you have to do, and now here's your
Mm-hmm.
ritual to like welcome the baby into life, and stuff like that. We don't have those established things, on our own, and we don't have a lot of communities that do it. Some people are, there's a lot of places that are doing it. You had that friend in Oregon who was pregnant and had like a baby shower, but it was like a
Oh my
really
God.
crazy,
So
beautiful
beautiful.
ritual that they had
Mm-hmm.
like crafted themselves. And that sounded really powerful and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of people there supporting her.
Mm-hmm.
So it's happening, but it's not established for all of us. It's not just standardized the way it was before.
Mm-hmm.
This is, something I grieve a little bit in the world, but I hope that what we're moving back towards
Mm-hmm.
it in some way.
Yeah, that baby shower, it's so funny. It wasn't, I keep calling it a baby shower. This was a hilarious story for like my New York brain. So my friend, my friend was pregnant and she invited me, and she didn't call it a baby shower. She said something like, I'm having like a welcoming ceremony or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you're invited. And I was like, cool. And so I feel like on the East Coast, you like go to a baby shower, you bring flowers, you bring cake, you bring like, whatever, you're supposed to get a little present. I was just going with this like mindset of where it's just going to be like ladies sitting around and chatting, and maybe we'll watch her open some gifts. And it was this beautiful ceremony led by her friend. We like drank cacao and like meditated around my friend, and all like shared messages that were coming through us, and like just like welcomed her into the motherhood portal, because she was close to giving birth at that time. And like, just, I don't know, it was really, really moving, and it was really, really cool. And I left being like, oh my God, that's how we're supposed to share space with each other, basically. So yeah, that made me happy. So it is one of those things. And again, in the world that we live, the kind of patriarchal influence kind of has ruined these symbolic rites of passage in a lot of ways. Even in Greek myth, Hera, or Juno, is the goddess of marriage. She's married to Zeus, or Jupiter, who cheats on her constantly. And so even though she was forced into this kind of like wifely position, which she accepted, I think, at first, and then realized that he was not being faithful to her and breaking that promise, she's then recast as like the shrew wife in myth. And she is that sort of like the base of that archetype that we see in everything from Shakespeare to Hollywood, everything in between. And so it's a very old symbol that we have, that I feel like, that Zeus influence, the sky god influence, the patriarchal influence, messes with the sweetness of it in a way. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, because of the subjugation of women that is inherent in the idea of marriage as a like a contract. When you think of marriage as a contract, there is something to be, the wife is the thing that is owned, and we literally know this. I mean, like, it was only until like what, 1996 or 1989 or I don't remember. It was only about 30 years ago that they said that there's such thing as spousal rape. Like, like,
insane.
Because it's there is women are property in patriarchy. They have to be. It's how it functions. Patriarchy functions on the devaluation of the opposite. So that's what it's built upon. And so it is hard, as women at least, to look at marriage and see that only as a union. Kitty feet.
Do you see? I know. For everyone who's listening, Federico has decided that he's a baby. Are you my
Baby
secret
Fed.
child? Are you my secret child? He's my firstborn. He's making me very warm. He's extremely
Why
radiating.
Are you so hot?
He's just, I don't know. He's just being this way.
My cat Mowgli recently had a biopsy, so they shaved all his belly hair off, and now I could feel how hot his belly is. So hot.
I think they do run warm, these critters.
Yeah, they're hotter than we are. They're like something like 95 degrees or something like that.
What are you doing with that heat, Fed? Anyway.
Wait, no, we're 98.6. So they're like 103 or something like that. Because I remember when Pandora had a fever, they were like, if she's over 106 or 108 or something. And I was like, what? So they're toasty babies.
You're pretty cool, Fed. You're pretty warm and cool.
But yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just we can't separate that for us,
Mm.
unfortunately. But when we think about it symbolically, we can retrieve something. We can
Mm.
retrieve the act of, yes, union with another person, which is seeing the other for who they are and deciding to bond to them,
Mhm.
but also deciding to commit to somebody to you know, be our partners in navigating life. And that's ultimately what marriage is about. Have you ever read the passage on marriage from Khalil Gibran? Gibran.
If I did, it was a long time
I
ago.
have it up here because I don't remember what I said at my wedding vows because it was 10 years ago. But I read this and I know that everybody looked at me like I was a crazy person.
Oh.
So this is from the prophet. And he says, let there be spaces in your togetherness. And whoa, that was not English. Let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you, be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow.
Mm.
And I thought that was just the best description of what marriage is as a lived ritual, a lived symbol, rather than, the alchemical symbol of everything coming together and mushing into one. That's a beautiful image and highly symbolic, but it's not how we experience marriage overall. um, but that idea of being together and apart at once was very moving to me. And I think that it's very useful in understanding what it actually feels like symbolically as these like pillars of the same temple. And I remember reading this and like my mother-in-law looking at me and like other people looking at me like, excuse me, who's reading like let us be together but not too enmeshed at their wedding? Me.
No,
um,
but it's beautiful. And it reminds me too of some of the drawings of the rebus imagery that I have seen that have caught my eye, make it so that the man and the woman are Artemis and Apollo.
mm-hmm.
Very obviously. So there's like a crescent moon and then a sun
Yep.
over each of
Yep.
their heads. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that sort of like the tension of opposites that we talk
Right.
about a lot on this show is part of that together but separate sort of
Yep.
thing, which we all need as a counterbalance in
Mm-hmm.
partnership or even just in different areas of our existences. And
Yeah.
existence, that makes sense for us needs to have that measured sort of reflection
Mm-hmm.
and together but separateness. So,
Mm-hmm.
that is like, yeah, alchemy is so much about the kind of joining together and then the breaking down and like commingling of elemental pieces to
Yep.
make something new.
Yep.
But there's another way of holding it too, where, you get to be like a kind of sacred mirror for an other if you're
Yeah.
marrying yourself to something. So,
Yeah. I
mm-hmm.
love that. That image is really special of being like a mirror to somebody. I think of that a lot with the lover's card. Like I think,
Mm-hmm.
with the lover's card we get it so wrong often where we're like, I'm looking for my love. And we're looking for the love. And the love is something we all need. But it's not about like finding the perfect love that will love you. It's about being willing to embrace somebody as the mirror of you and to see them through that reflection somehow and at who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the greatest challenge of the lovers is not like whether we're loved enough, but can we actually love somebody else and not, as Jung would say, just see the replica of our own unknown face
Mm-hmm.
and then get angry at it. Like this is, classic problem of any relationship is that we hate the other person because we're seeing exactly what we cannot bear to see about ourselves. Um, this is this is why we pick them, so they make
Mm-hmm.
us do that. And can we look in the mirror and see ourselves through the relationship, and can we look through the mirror and see them as they really are? And that's the real task of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it's about personally.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anyone is good at it, especially not me. But this is what we're
You
all
are. It's hard. It's
all
hard.
aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I'm really glad that you got to experience that that ceremony and that ritual, and that you didn't decide to skip it
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of say,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we're going along."
Federico, you were not there. Actually, he was.
Federico's very pleased because his parents are legitimized, and so now he's not a bastard.
You're not a bastard anymore. Yay! Good job. he he was very scared during the wedding because we were all trying to blow dry our hair in
Oh
my
my God,
bedroom where
so
he
many
was being
women
kept. Yeah.
and so many women trying to blow
So
dry
many
their hair.
ruined outfits and ruined makeups. But yeah, no, I have a lot of gratitude for being like initiated by that storm into whatever the next phase of existence is in terms of my partnership, which is, an important part of my life. And I think that it also can't come as anything else but a storm, basically. So it makes sense that it would have been that way. And
I mean, you were blessed by the sea.
we were, Venus favors marriages at sea. And so this was our idea. And then we got a whole lot of
sea.
Mm-hmm. So that was it. And I think that, maybe to add one more thought of like, where we see ideas about marriage and that sort of counterpoint that you were speaking about with the Lover's card. In our natal chart, the ascendant descendant axis is something that I often point people towards when they come to me asking for advice about holding tension in partnership and what it means to be partnered with somebody else or something else. And so if you look at the, ascendant point, that is reflective of you, the individual, the chart owner. And then the descendant point is about what relationship actually kind of symbolizes for you and maybe what kinds of partners you attract or what it means for you to show up as partnered. And so looking to that other point is an interesting indicator of that sort of, what are we holding in tension in our partnerships and what do we bring and what are we looking for from another? So it can help you if you're looking for that mirror point. So little astro tip.
Love it. Very cute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess we'll talk about a dream now.
Let's do it.
If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to leave a review or learn more about how you can support us on Mighty Networks, where you can get access to some exciting exclusive offerings. Or you can connect with us by sharing a symbolic experience, whether from a dream or synchronicity, for us to explore on the show. Thank you to today's sharer, and please tell us your symbolic experience or connect with us on our website, sorormysticapodcast.com.
Are you a small business looking to reach a targeted audience of people interested in all things esoteric? If this sounds like you, Soror Mystica would love to invite you to become an ad partner. We offer a highly tailored audience of mindful, curious, depth-seeking listeners, and we would be delighted to showcase your business and offerings to new hearts and new minds. Simply fill out an advertiser application form at our website, linked in the show notes below, or navigate to sorormysticapodcast.com/advertise with us.
Hello, my lovers of tarot, astrology, and the symbolic. Would you like to go on even deeper dives into topics that are even more niche and specialized and fascinating? Perhaps you'd like to explore angels in the tarot, or beasts in your dreams, or the thresholds of astrology. This is just a sampling of the bonus episodes we have over at our cloister. So go in the show notes and click the link and join us in even deeper conversations. We really hope to see you there. We have a really sweet dream from a listener. It says, "This is a dream I had a while ago. I've been thinking about it a lot since. I've made some changes in my life recently that I am happy with, or am I? I think I think I've made the right decisions." So, I was dreaming in my dream. The first time I woke up, I was dismayed to see that all the plants that had been growing in my garden had been eaten. Only two white flowering small trees remained, facing opposite each other. The second time I woke up, the two trees had gone as well. All that remained was a rectangular patch of bare earth. I knew the garden had been eaten by a deer. As I looked at the bare soil, I could see the faint outline of a basketball/netball court beneath it. What are your first takes on this dream?
Obviously, the idea of doubling is always really, really interesting. And we've been talking about things being held in attention of opposites in this episode. And so, my question is like, this person is wondering if they've done the right thing or if they've made the right decisions or choices. And those two trees are facing opposite to one another. And so it seems to symbolize maybe two different paths or two different ways of going somewhere, facing another direction. And I think that what's always interesting to me about that kind of imagery is like, how do we take ourselves through the in between, almost like the two towers, mountains in the moon card, right?
Yeah.
How do we do that? So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
For me, it was the Garden of Eden thing, like kind of mirroring that story of the two trees in the garden, being the center point of the garden, and one tree is the knowledge of good and evil, and the other is the tree of life. So basically, one being like the tree of just like pure essence, and the other one being the tree of consciousness. So that was an interesting theme, I thought, here too. But yeah, I think that the idea of doubling, and there's like this question of, am I on the right path or not? I think I am, but I'm not sure. Could be like there's a space between that, in the dream. That could totally be a layer to it. I'm always interested by the idea of dreaming in a dream. Like, what in the world is that? Like, that's some meta shit.
It is. I know. It's like you're in the deep layer of something else.
Yeah, it's like the psyche says here, instead of just giving you a story to kind of summarize this moment for you, I'm going to give you a story about the story you're telling yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. And so I think that if you just mentally picture that too, it's like we're going deeper and deeper into the basement or into the layers of the subconscious. And so, to me, dreaming within a dream is just really calling to the dreamer's attention, the importance of dreams in general for them. It's like dreaming and your dream life is so important to you that you're even having dreams about that. And that's a really necessary thing to be paying attention to, especially when we are at these turning points in our experiences. So, whether these are the trees in the garden or, trees that we walk between or trees that symbolize different ways of being, there's something about like the split between dreaming and waking life that feels like it's super, super important here.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that the garden is like destroyed or the garden is ripped out.
Yeah. So all of the plants had been eaten. Only two trees remained, and then the second time the two trees also had been eaten, they were gone. All that remained was a rectangular patch of bare earth, and that they knew that it had been eaten by a deer specifically. And then there was a faint outline of a basketball or netball court beneath. So something interestingly, like you would think that like as we go layer down a layer, you would see something more ancient. But like it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
Like we go down a layer, we see something a little bit more like shocking and contemporary, and like
Suburban. Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting that we're kind of
Yeah.
shifting in that way.
Deer are very suburban creatures. Like
They are.
they're all over
Yeah.
the suburbs.
Yeah.
Deer to me are always Artemis, right? She's like a huntress goddess. So
They're
I wonder.
gentle. They are like usually something that we feel a little bit like stunned and grateful to see past us, but like are not something that we interact with in a daily way generally.
Yeah. I always wanted to befriend the deer in my neighborhood growing up, but I could never do it. I could never catch them.
Yeah, I think I shared my crazy king god deer dream before that I had years ago. That was in Vermont. Cristina just came back from Vermont on her honeymoon, so she knows the wild beauty of Vermont.
So beautiful.
Fresh.
So beautiful. Federico, I don't understand. Anyway, I think that for this dreamer, there's also this kind of tension of like presence and absence, the flowers and then the bare earth. Like what are you feeling is caught in that balance, or what are you feeling has been taken or needs to be replanted? Deer are also really like proliferating creatures.
Yeah.
Like they kind of overdo it. Like their population is exploding all of the time. And they're like a fertile symbol to me. So it's like, where is the fertility of the earth in your psyche? And
Yeah.
is it kind of letting things grow, or are we uprooting? Like what's going on there?
I would definitely check in with what your personal associations with the symbol of the deer are, because there are definitely some more archetypal ones which you can investigate. But a lot of us, especially if we're living anywhere in the United States or Canada, or we're probably encountering deer in some way. So what does it mean for you? As a city kid, seeing a deer is like literally seeing like a magical angel come out of nowhere, because I never saw them. So like if you were somewhere where deer were there, you're like, whoa, I'm in the wilderness, guys. But then you're like 40 minutes away in Westchester and they're just like living.
They're just there. They're everywhere.
So it's, for different people, you might have a different association. So I would start there and check in. Do you feel like deer in some way have some kind of nuisance quality or negative connotation in your mind, or are they something special and sweet to you? Where does that fall? So that's something I would start with. And then the basketball netball court, I feel like something else that's there is like the idea of the game. Like a game, some kind of competition, something being played. There's like a non-reality about being in a game that's kind of like we're just like back and forth. We're just trying to play this thing out, and it's a little bit distance from real life. So maybe there's an element there about underneath the surface of what you're trying to plant. Is there some kind of part of you that feels like you're stuck in a competition or stuck in a game of some kind, of things like bouncing back and forth without really having resolution? Maybe there's something in there too.
I love that. I think that's a great question. And yeah, this is a very open-ended dream. Sometimes dreams are very like, this is probably about this.
Yeah.
Do some active imagination with this. I feel like this dream is just kind of like an interesting poem. It's like an interesting offering of different avenues that are kind of all pointing to a handful of questions about being and presence and fertility and that kind of experience. So that's what I would guide this person towards. And obviously journaling about it, active imagination, yes, with deer maybe. But there's nothing super concrete here. It's very much like we're doubling, we're negating, etc. So
there's just like symbols thrown out. I would also, this is a Ace of Pentacles dream to me in many ways, in that we're in the garden and the garden seems to be vanishing. So, considering where that Ace of Pentacles is, how do we get it to flourish? That might be a question too. What would make it feel like it's flourishing rather than diminishing?
Yeah. Where's the anxiety of lack coming in at what, for what purpose?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Good luck with that. And I think this was a successful return episode, comeback episode.
We're back. We'll see you guys soon. And I hope to see you in the Witch Triumvirate if you choose to join me on that journey. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Okay, take care. Thank you for joining us in our conversation today.
Please consider supporting the podcast by leaving a review and following Soror Mystica wherever you listen.
You can also become a more active supporter and a member of the Soror Mystica community by joining our Patreon.
If you have a symbolic experience that you'd like to share with us for the podcast, you can tell us all about it at sorormysticapodcast.com.
The music for this podcast is written and performed by me, Mariana Lewis, with special thanks to Stefan Lewis. You can connect with both Cristina and myself on Instagram and get to know our work by clicking on the links in the show notes.
As the alchemical motto goes, as above, so below. as within, so without.
May this ancient wisdom continue to guide you deeper.
Until next time, take good care.